I am 98 years old now, and my hands shake when I hold anything for too long. And the paper where I wrote the numbers years ago is yellow and soft, like it might tear if I press too hard. But I keep it in the drawer next to my bed because it reminds me of what I did and what I lost by doing it the right way, but alone. $1 million. That was the number I reached when I was 65, and I remember the day I saw it on the screen and felt nothing but a kind of heaviness in my chest, like I had won something, but there was no one to tell, and no one who would understand why it mattered or why it didn't matter the way I thought it would. I worked for 43 years in the same company, and I was not special. And I did not have a gift for numbers or business or anything that people write about in those books with shiny covers. I just showed up and I saved and I put money away every month, even when it hurt. And even when my friends were buying new cars and taking trips and living like the future was guaranteed. I ate the same lunch for years and I drove the same car until the floor had rust holes and I wore clothes until they were thin. And I told myself that this was the path and that one day I would have enough and that enough would mean freedom. But when I got there, I told no one, not my children, not my brother, not the few people I still called friends. I kept working for 2 more years because I didn't know what else to do and because stopping felt like admitting that I had been wrong about something I couldn't name. And when I finally did stop, I moved to a smaller place and I kept living the same way I always had because the habits were carved into me like grooves in old wood. And because I was afraid that if I spent the money, I would lose it and be back where I started with nothing and no one. Now I sit here and I think about what that silence cost me. I think about my son who struggled to pay for his daughter's school and how I could have helped but didn't because I was afraid he would ask for more or think I was rich or stop trying on his own. I think about my daughter who worked 2 jobs for years and how I watched her get thin and tired, and I said nothing because I thought she needed to learn what I learned, which was that life is hard and you survive by holding on tight and never letting go. I think about the trips I didn't take and the dinners I didn't buy and the small generosities I withheld because I was so used to withholding that I forgot how to give. The money is still there, most of it, sitting in accounts with long numbers and statements that come in the mail every month. And I look at them and feel nothing except a kind of tiredness that goes deeper than my bones. My children will get it when I die, and they will be surprised and maybe hurt that I never told them. And maybe they will understand, and maybe they won't. But I know now that I made a mistake, not in saving, not in being careful, but in thinking that the money was the point, in thinking that reaching the number would mean I had done something worth doing, in thinking that security was the same as living. I told no one because I thought telling would make me vulnerable. I thought people would want things from me or see me differently or expect something I couldn't give. I thought the money was mine and mine alone, and that protecting it meant protecting myself. But what I protected myself from was connection. What I saved myself from was being needed. What I held on to so tightly was not freedom, but a kind of prison. I built one careful decision at a time. If you are young and you are saving and you are doing what I did, then listen to me. The money matters, but it is not the thing. The thing is the people and the moments. and the chances to be generous when generosity costs you something. The thing is letting people see you and know you and need you even when it scares you. The thing is understanding that you can be careful and still be open, and that the worst thing you can do is reach the end and realize you spent your whole life preparing for a future that never felt like enough because you never let yourself live in it. I have the money and I have the time now, but I don't have the energy and I don't have the people. And most days I sit in this chair and I think about the moments I could have said yes and didn't, and the times I could have been soft and chose to be hard instead. And I know that when I go, the number will still be there, but I won't. And no one will remember what I did to get it, but they might remember what I didn't do with it. If this matters to you, then maybe you will stay and listen to more of what I have learned, because I still have some things to say and not much time to say them. And I think the hardest part was not the saving itself, but the fear that lived under it like a shadow. I couldn't shake no matter how much I put away. My father lost everything in his 50s, and I watched him become small and quiet and ashamed. And I told myself I would never be like that. I would never be caught without a plan or a cushion or a way out. So I built the cushion and I kept building it, even after it was big enough, and even after it was more than I would ever need, because the fear didn't go away with the money. It just changed shape and found new reasons to stay. I remember when I was 32 and my wife wanted to buy a house with a yard because she was pregnant with our second child, and she said the apartment was too small and the neighborhood was too loud, and she wanted our children to have space to run and trees to climb. And I said no. I said we couldn't afford it. I showed her the numbers, and I talked about interest rates and down payments and what could go wrong. And I made it sound reasonable and smart. But the truth was I was afraid of the debt, afraid of being locked in, afraid that if I spent that money, I wouldn't be able to save anymore, and the plan would fall apart, and I would end up like my father. We stayed in the apartment. She stopped asking. The children grew up sharing a small room and playing in parking lots, and they turned out fine. But I see now what we lost. Not just the yard or the space, but the chance for her to feel heard, and for me to show her that her happiness mattered more than my fear. She died 6 years ago, and when I think about her now, I think about that conversation and how her face looked when I said no, and how she never brought it up again. She learned to stop wanting things. She learned to make herself smaller to fit inside my fear. And I let her. I worked in an office with gray walls and fluorescent lights that hummed all day and made my head ache. I did the same tasks over and over, and I was good at them because I didn't need to be creative or interesting or noticed. I just needed to be steady. And steady is what I was. I came in early and I left late, and I never asked for raises or promotions because asking felt like risk, and risk felt like losing control. My coworkers went out for drinks on Fridays and took long lunches and called in sick when they wanted a day off, and I judged them for it. I thought they were weak and foolish and living beyond their means. I thought I was better because I was disciplined. But what I was alone. There was a man named Robert who worked in the same department, and he invited me to his house once for a barbecue, and I said no because I didn't want to spend money on a gift or feel obligated to invite him back or let anyone see how I lived. He stopped asking after a while. They all did. And I told myself it didn't matter because I had my plan and my numbers and my future. But the future kept moving further away no matter how much I saved, and the present kept passing by, and I kept thinking that one day I would relax and enjoy it, but one day never came. When I hit the $1 million mark, I was sitting at my desk and I logged into the account on my lunch break, and I saw the number and I stared at it for a long time. I thought I would feel relief or pride or accomplishment. I thought something would shift inside me and I would finally be able to breathe. But I just felt tired and a little bit sick because I realized that the number was just a number and it didn't change anything about who I was or what my life looked like. I was still in the same office with the same gray walls and the same humming lights, and I still didn't have anyone to call or anywhere to go or any reason to celebrate. I kept working because I didn't know what else to do. I told myself I needed to be sure. I needed a buffer. I needed to account for inflation and healthcare costs and emergencies I couldn't predict. I told myself 2 more years, then 3, then 5. And the money kept growing and my body kept getting older. And the people I knew kept disappearing one by one until I looked around and realized I'd spent my whole life getting ready to live, and now it was almost over. My son called me last year and asked if I could lend him $15,000 because his daughter needed surgery and his insurance wouldn't cover all of it. And I said I didn't have it. I lied to him. I listened to him apologize for asking and tell me he understood and that he would figure it out. And I let him believe I was struggling too. I told myself I was teaching him responsibility. I told myself that if I gave him money, once he would keep asking and I would never have peace. But the truth was, I was terrified of the number going down. I was terrified of losing control. I was terrified that if I started giving, I wouldn't be able to stop and I would end up with nothing. So I chose the money over my son. I chose the number over his daughter. And he figured it out without me. And he never asked again. And now when we talk, there is a distance between us that wasn't there before. And I know it's my fault. My daughter got married 3 years ago, and she didn't invite me. She sent a card afterwards with a picture of her and her husband standing on a beach somewhere warm and sunny, and they looked happy. She wrote that she hoped I was well and that she would call soon, but she didn't call, and I didn't reach out because I didn't know what to say. I had missed her birthdays and her graduations and the small moments when she needed me because I was always working or saving or worrying about the future. I thought she would understand one day. I thought she would see that I did it for her and for her brother and for all of us. But she didn't see it that way. She saw a father who was never there. She saw someone who cared more about money than people. And she was right. I live alone now in a place with 1 bedroom and a kitchen I barely use, and a window that looks out at a parking lot where people come and go and live their lives. And I watch them sometimes when I can't sleep, which is most nights. There is a young couple on the 2nd floor, and they fight loud enough that I can hear them through the walls. And sometimes I want to knock on their door and tell them to stop wasting time being angry because time is the only thing you can't save or put away or protect for later. But I don't knock. I just listen, and I remember the fights I had with my wife and how I was always so sure I was right, and how being right mattered more to me than being close to her. The money sits in the bank and compounds and grows even now, while I get smaller and weaker and less able to do anything with it. I thought about giving it away. I looked into charities and foundations and places that do good work with people who need help, but I couldn't do it. I would start the process and then stop and think about, what if I need it? And what if something happens? And what if I made a mistake? The fear is still there, even now. Even when I know I have more than I could ever spend and more than I will ever need. The fear outlived everything else. It outlived my marriage and my friendships and my relationship with my children. It outlived joy and spontaneity and the part of me that used to believe there was more to life than just surviving. I think about the trips I never took. My wife wanted to see Paris. She showed me pictures from a magazine once and talked about walking along the river and sitting in cafes and seeing the paintings in the museums. She said we could go when the children were older and we had more time. But I said it was too expensive. I said we needed to save for their college and for retirement and for all the things that might go wrong. She folded the magazine closed and put it away and never mentioned Paris again. She died without seeing it. I have the money now. I could go 10 times over, but I can't walk very far anymore, and my eyes are too weak to see the paintings, and there is no one to go with me, and no point in going alone to a place that was supposed to be for her. There is a woman who lives across the hall, and she brought me soup once when I was sick, and she tried to talk to me, but I didn't let her stay long because I didn't want her to think I needed anything or that I was lonely or that I might become a burden. She stopped knocking after that. I see her sometimes in the hallway, and she smiles polite and small and keeps walking, and I know I did that. I know I pushed away the last chance I had for something like friendship or connection or just someone to talk to who isn't a voice on the television. My brother died 2 years ago, and I didn't go to the funeral. He lived across the country, and we hadn't spoken in over a decade because of something stupid I can't even remember now. Something about money he borrowed and didn't pay back fast enough, or the way he lived his life, or some judgment I made that felt important at the time. I told myself I couldn't afford the plane ticket. I told myself it was too far and I was too old to travel. But I could have gone. I had the money. I just didn't want to face him or his family, or admit that I had wasted years being stubborn and proud over nothing that mattered. His daughter sent me a letter afterwards and said he asked about me near the end and that he hoped we could talk again someday. I keep the letter in the same drawer as the paper with the numbers, and sometimes I take it out and read it and feel something heavy settle in my chest that won't move no matter how long I sit with it. I tried to volunteer once at a community center because I thought maybe I could do something useful with my time, and maybe being around people would help. They asked me to help serve meals and talk to the people who came in, and I lasted 2 days before I stopped going. It was too much. The noise and the questions and the way people looked at me expecting something I didn't know how to give. I was so used to keeping myself closed off that I didn't know how to open up anymore. I didn't know how to be warm or generous or present. I had spent so long protecting myself that I forgot what it felt like to be part of something. If you are saving and planning and doing everything right, then maybe you should ask yourself what you are saving for. Not the number, not the idea of security or retirement or freedom, but what you actually want your life to look like, who you want to be with, what you want to do, what you want to feel. Because I never asked myself those questions. I just followed the plan and trusted that the plan would lead somewhere good. But the plan only led to more plan. The saving only led to more saving. And the fear only led to more fear. I see people now on the television or through my window living their lives in ways that seem careless and foolish and risky. They spend money on things they don't need and take trips they can't afford and trust that it will all work out somehow. And part of me still judges them. Part of me still thinks I was smarter and more disciplined and more responsible. But another part of me envies them because they lived. They took the risk. They let themselves be vulnerable and open and foolish. And maybe they don't have $1 million in the bank. Maybe they will struggle when they get old. But they will have the memories and the connections and the feeling of having been fully alive at least some of the time. Maybe if you are reading this or hearing this, you will think about it differently than I did. Maybe you will find a way to save and still live. Maybe you will protect yourself without closing yourself off. Maybe you will reach the number and still have people who love you and know you and want to be with you. I hope you do. I hope you don't end up like me, with everything you thought you wanted and nothing that actually matters. I had a dream last night that I was young again and standing in the apartment where we raised the children, and my wife was there folding laundry and humming something I couldn't quite hear. And I walked over to her and I said, yes, yes to the house with the yard, yes to Paris, yes to all the things she wanted that I said no to because I was afraid. And she looked at me with her face young and soft, the way it was before I wore her down. And she smiled. And then I woke up and I was here in this room alone, and the sun was coming through the window, and I felt something break inside me that I didn't know was still whole. I called my son yesterday. I told him I'd been thinking about him and about his daughter, and I asked how the surgery went and if everything was all right. He said it went fine. He said they managed. He didn't ask me why I was calling or why I wanted to know now. He was polite and distant the way you are with someone you used to know but don't anymore. And I wanted to tell him about the money. I wanted to say I was sorry for lying and that I could have helped and that I was wrong. But the words wouldn't come. They sat in my throat like stones, and I couldn't get them out. So I just said, I was glad everything worked out. And he said, thank you. And we hung up, and I sat there, holding the phone for a long time afterwards. I think about writing them a letter, my son and my daughter, explaining everything, telling them about the fear and the plan and the way I thought I was doing the right thing, telling them that the money is theirs and that I should have shared it sooner, and that I'm sorry for all the ways I failed them. But every time I start writing, I stop because I don't know how to say it without making excuses or asking for forgiveness I don't deserve. And I worry that even now I would find a way to hold back. Even now I would find a way to protect myself instead of just being honest and letting them see me. The truth is, I'm afraid of dying, but I'm more afraid of how I lived. I'm afraid that when I am gone, there will be nothing left of me except the money and a few distant memories of a man who was cold and careful and never really there. I'm afraid that my grandchildren will grow up hearing stories about me that make me sound like a stranger. I'm afraid that all the discipline and sacrifice and planning will add up to nothing, because I forgot that the point of having enough was to be able to give it away and share it and use it to make life softer and warmer for the people I loved. There was a moment when I was 47 and my wife asked me to take a day off work and spend it with her doing nothing, just walking around the city and getting lunch and being together without a plan or a purpose. And I said I couldn't. I said I had too much to do and that we could do it another time. But there was no other time. There was always too much to do and always another reason to say no. And she stopped asking. She learned to expect nothing from me except the paycheck and the roof and the silent presence of someone who was there, but not really there. I wish I could go back. I wish I could take that day off and walk with her and hold her hand and let myself be present and foolish and unconcerned about the plan for just a few hours. I wish I could buy the house with the yard and take her to Paris and say yes to my son when he needed help and show up to my daughter's wedding, even if she didn't invite me. I wish I could knock on my neighbor's door and thank her for the soup and ask if she wants to have coffee sometime. I wish I could be different, but I can't go back. I can only sit here and tell you what I learned so that maybe you won't have to learn it the way I did. The money doesn't care about you. It doesn't love you. It doesn't hold you when you're scared or sit with you when you're lonely or remember you when you're gone. It just sits there, cold and still and meaningless, without people to share it with and reasons to use it that matter more than the number itself. I have the $1 million. I have more than that now, but I would trade all of it for one more day with my wife where I said yes instead of no. I would trade all of it for a relationship with my children that wasn't broken by my own fear and stubbornness. I would trade all of it to feel like I lived instead of just survived. If you are saving, then save. Be smart. Be careful. Plan for the future. But don't do what I did. Don't let the plan become the prison. Don't let the fear become bigger than the love. Don't wait until you have enough, because enough will never come if you don't decide what it's for. The number is not the point. The security is not the point. The point is the life you live while you're building it and the people you bring with you and the moments you say yes to, even when it costs you something. I don't have much time left. My hands shake and my heart is weak and I get tired just walking to the bathroom. But I have the money still sitting in the bank waiting for someone to do something meaningful with it. And I hope my children will. I hope they will use it to make their lives easier and their children's lives better. And maybe they will think of me when they do, and maybe they won't hate me for holding on to it so tightly for so long. But even if they do, I will deserve it because I chose the money over them 100 times, and I can't undo that now. If this resonates, share it. Leave a comment and tell me if you've made the same mistakes or if you're making them now. Subscribe because I have more to say while I still can, and maybe hearing it will save you from ending up where I am. The clock is ticking for all of us. What are you going to do with your time?